Hello and welcome to this high-level roundtable on state-owned enterprises and competitiveness. We will discuss new risks and new strategies impacting national competitiveness in an increasingly risk-prone global environment. I am Maija Strandberg, Chair of the OECD Working Party on State Ownership and Privatisation Practices, and also Director General of the Ownership Steering Department of the Prime Minister's Office in Finland. On behalf of the Finnish Chair of the 2026 MCM and the OECD, I welcome you to this timely discussion. Please be aware that we will be recording this event today, as we are very pleased to have our delegates from our Working Party and capitals joining online to follow the meeting. The recording may be published on the OECD website after the event, and we will take your attendance as a consent to this process. Please also note French and English interpretation is also available. To commence our meeting, I am pleased to welcome Matthias Cormann, OECD Secretary General, to share opening remarks. This will be followed by Mr. Sakari Puisto, Minister of Economic Affairs and Employment of Finland. We will then proceed to a roundtable discussion moderated by Carmine Di Noia, OECD Director for Financial and Enterprise Affairs, who will provide a scene-setting presentation on the role of SOEs across global markets, before moderating a discussion with the panel of government and SOE corporate representatives. Mr. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, dear Minister Puisto, ministers, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends all. Welcome also from me to this roundtable on state-owned enterprises and competitiveness, and thank you to Finland for organizing it and for choosing a topic that sits right at the center of this week's discussion on industrial policy and the level playing field. Let me start the conversation with a number that I think, or a couple of numbers I should say, that puts a very stark frame around this conversation. In the year 2000, and that's just 26 years ago, not that long ago, but there were 34 state-owned enterprises among the 500 largest companies by revenue in the world. 34, less than 7%. By the year 2023, just 23 years later, there were 126 state-owned enterprises among the 500 largest companies by revenue in the world. That is around 1/4 of the world's largest companies are now state-owned. And the total number of large non-financial state-owned enterprises has more than doubled globally, from around 9,500 in 2013 to 23,000 in 2023. Around 2,400 state-owned enterprises are partly listed on equity markets with a combined market capitalization of $10 trillion US, 9% of global market value. So the point I'm trying to make here is that state-owned enterprises are not a legacy phenomenon that we're trending away from. It's going the other way. They have been on the comeback trail as a growing force in the global economy, which is why how we govern them, both at home and internationally, really matters. The challenge facing governments is not simple, because it cuts in two directions simultaneously. On one side, state-owned enterprises can, of course, be genuine instruments of good industrial policy. They can channel investment into strategic sectors where private incentives are insufficient. They can drive innovation, support energy security, deliver public services, and strengthen supply chain resilience, including via the due diligence practices that flow through their value chains to private sector suppliers. On the other side, state-owned enterprises can be instruments of unfair competition when they receive preferential financing, regulatory exemptions, or implicit government guarantees that private competitors do not receive. The market stops being a level playing field. When they're used to advance strategic state interests rather than commercial objectives, acquiring technologies dominating critical sectors, distorting trade, they become a source of economic security risk for partner countries. And both of these things can be true simultaneously. The question is not whether state-owned enterprises should exist. They do exist and they will exist. The question is how to ensure they operate in ways that contribute to growth and competitiveness without distorting the markets and trade relationships that underpin shared prosperity. And the question has become more urgent because the geopolitical context has very much evolved. The discussions throughout this ministerial week on industrial subsidies, for example, on the data revealed in the MAGIC database, on steel overcapacity, on supply chain resilience, all point to the same underlying reality. State direction of economic activity is growing, is increasingly strategic in a non-market-based economic way, which is creating new and growing pressures on the open, rules-based trading system that our economies depend on and that have underpinned decades of growing prosperity. State-owned enterprises are central to that dynamic. They are major recipients of the industrial subsidies our data tracks. They are significant actors in the supply chains for critical minerals, semiconductors, and energy infrastructure. And their governance, or lack of it, has direct implications for economic security. And this is where the OECD guidelines on corporate governance of state-owned enterprises become genuinely important, not just as a governance standard, but as a strategic economic policy tools. And those guidelines identify three core requirements. First, state-owned enterprises should align their governance practices with those of listed firms, equal treatment of investors, transparent board nomination processes, high-quality financial and non-financial disclosure, and rigorous auditing. When these are not bureaucratic requirements, they are the foundation of market trust. Second, the various roles of the state as owner, regulator, and policymaker must be clearly separated to avoid conflicts of interest. When the state sets the rules and also runs the players, fair competition becomes impossible. Independent board members, transparent ownership rationales, and regular review of whether state ownership remains justified are essential safeguards. Third, state-owned enterprises should lead by example on sustainability and responsible business conduct, not as a secondary objective, but as a core part of how they create long-term value and model the standards they expect from their private sector supply chains. Critically, these guidelines give you something else, a credible reference point for negotiations with trading partners on a level playing field. So when you're discussing competitive neutrality with a partner whose state-owned enterprises receive preferential treatment, the OECD guidelines give you an evidence-based, internationally agreed framework to anchor that conversation. We're strengthening our practical support for governments implementing their standards. Indeed, in April, we released new guidance with a step-by-step approach to ownership policy design, implementation, and monitoring. We've also developed a new global state-owned enterprise data set, a firm-level panel covering the decade between 2013 and 2023, which for the first time gives governments and researchers a comprehensive, comparable picture of state-owned enterprise activity worldwide. And we continue to deepen country-level and regional engagement through tailored support and peer learning. State-owned enterprises are becoming larger, more numerous, and more strategically significant. That makes the governance question ever more important. Well-governed state-owned enterprises can be powerful contributors to growth, resilience, and to successfully navigating the digital and clean energy transitions, but poorly governed ones, or those used as instruments of state strategy without proper transparency or accountability around them, are a threat to the competitive markets and rules-based trading system we are all here this week to defend and promote and advance. The OECD will continue to provide the data, the standards, and the platforms to facilitate the discussions and to help you navigate that challenge together. So I'm very much looking forward to our discussions here today. And Thank you very much, Maya.
Then I would like to give the word next to Mr. Sakari Puisto, who is the Minister of Economic Affairs from Finland. Mr. Puisto, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. To see you here joining this high-level roundtable ahead of the OECD Ministerial Council Meeting. In today's risk-prone economy, the question is no longer whether the state will shape markets, but how it does so to strengthen resilience while protecting the competitive, rules-based foundations of prosperity. This roundtable is forward-looking by design. It connects government strategy with corporate execution at a time when geopolitics, supply chain disruption, and technological change are redefining competitiveness. The OECD's advantage is its ability to turn shared experience into evidence, standards, and practical guidance, especially where state action intersects with market functioning. Governments are deploying a wider toolkit from industrial policy and strategic financing to resilience planning. The risk is fragmentation, distorted competition, and contested support measures. The opportunity is smarter, rules-based coordination that preserves openness and investor confidence. And that is why OECD principles on governance, integrity, and a level playing field matter more than ever. Resilience must be built in a way that preserves competitiveness. Finland is honored to chair the MCM this year. Our ambition is clear: keep open markets strong while strengthening resilience. This roundtable can feed directly into the ministerial agenda because it goes to a core policy challenge: how to mobilize strategic capacity without degrading market credibility. State-owned enterprises are central to this challenge. SOEs are major actors in global markets, concentrated in energy, infrastructure, logistics, extractive industries, and finance. These are sectors that anchor resilience and competitiveness. As Honorable General Secretary of the OECD, Matthias Cormann, pointed out, the footprint of SOEs is only growing. Among the world's 500 largest firms by revenue, state-owned enterprises increased from 34 in 2000 to 126 in 2023. And at this scale, SOEs shape investments, technologies, and strategic dependencies to a great extent. Governance is therefore a competitive issue, not just an ownership issue. To keep the debates operational, it helps us to distinguish two categories of state ownership. First, commercially operating SOEs where state has a strategic interest. These companies compete often at the international level, and the state should focus on high-quality corporate governance. The strategic interest should be real in order to keep government interference in private markets minimal. Second, SOEs with specific public policy assignments implementing measures in market-deprived areas. These entities act as policy instruments where the owner defines missions, actions, and also acceptable risks, as well as ensures coherence across instruments. This distinction clarifies what should be governed like a market competitor and what should be governed as a policy tool. The OECD recommendations provide a solid framework, but national measures and differences must be taken into account in their application. Finland's state ownership portfolio is quite significant. The state holds ownership in around 70 companies across sectors, from minority stakes to full ownership. Our approach is pragmatic and transparent. A strategic rationale for ownership, solid governance, and a competitive neutrality in competitive markets. One area of focus is a robust, comprehensive security, where whole of society approach safeguards continuity of vital societal functions. SOEs are a critical part of this, as they operate essential infrastructure and support security of supply. Another area where Finnish SOEs are active is in execution of innovation and growth policy in market-deprived areas. Here, our state-owned investment company catalyzes private capital into technology companies in strategic business areas such as space and quantum technology. The OECD's 2024 guidelines on corporate governance of state-owned enterprises provide a practical way to balance strategic objectives and market integrity. I invite us to focus on what works in practice, which governance arrangements and ownership strategies deliver resilience, innovation, and strategic investment while safeguarding competition. Our shared objective is clear. SOEs can be strategic partners, but only if rules, governance, and transparencies are strong enough to preserve trust and competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Puisto. Then we would actually move to our roundtable discussion under the heading National Strategies for SOEs as Partners for Resilience, Competitiveness and Growth. I would invite next Mr. Carmine Di Noia, OECD Director for Financial and Enterprise Affairs. Carmine, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Secretary General, Minister Puisto, colleagues. Thank you for joining us for this discussion on state-owned enterprises and competitiveness. Now, state-owned enterprises, SOEs are companies that are owned or controlled by government. That are often used, and we heard to provide services, manage strategic assets, or support public policy goals. And they play an important role in competitiveness, or resilience and security. And this is a role which is increasing, as it was clearly mentioned. Today, so we will hear from a distinguished panel on how SOEs can act as a strategic partner, and how governments can create an enabling environment while ensuring fairness and efficiency. Now, before turning to the panel, I'm pleased to briefly set the scene. Slides should move on. Okay. Now, as the Secretary General noted, now SOEs indeed have a large economic footprint, and again, it's not a legacy that is increasing the role, and so this footprint has been growing over the past decade. Our new global SOE data set we just published last week, so you can find on our website. Shows that there are now more than 22,000 large non-financial SOEs globally, employing around 34 million people and holding roughly $40 trillion in assets. Now, these SOEs operate across key sectors such as energy, transport, utilities, mining, and manufacturing. If we also include financial SOEs, the total footprint rises substantially to more than 30,000 SOEs with combined assets of around $150 trillion. Equivalent, actually 150 is around 140 global GDP. So financial SOEs, including state-owned banks, insurance companies, and development finance institutions, play a central role in channeling capital within domestic economies. For example, they are often key providers of credit to households and firms. The non-financial SOE footprint is concentrated mainly in emerging markets. These economies account for over 60% of SOEs by number, more than 70% of SOE assets, and over 80% of SOE employment. China represents the largest share, with its portion of global non-financial SOE assets rising from around 38% in 2013 to more than 60% in 2023. Now, governments retain SOEs for a range of policy reasons. We heard the classification in a sense of Minister Puisto, but often SOEs exist where governments consider that public ownership can help secure outcomes that markets may not deliver on their own, market failure, as we study in Econ 101. Drawing on forthcoming OECD policy data, the most commonly cited rationale include providing essential public services, for example, transport, water, energy, postal services, or other basic infrastructure, safeguarding national security or strategic interest, and especially in this more complicated geopolitical context, we have seen this role increasing, particularly in sectors linked to defense, critical infrastructure, energy security, or economic resilience, supporting national economic development or industrial policy objectives, including efforts to develop key sectors, support competitiveness, or advance long-term strategic priorities, correcting market failures, for example, where private provision may be insufficient, unavailable, or not aligned with public needs, traditional role of SOEs, fulfilling social or environmental policy goals, such as ensuring access to healthcare, supporting regional development, advancing climate or sustainability objectives, what also SG was saying, leading by example, also according to our new updated guidelines. Now, SOEs are often found in sectors that are strategic for economic resilience and national development. However, SOEs portfolio differs significantly across countries and regions, often depending on economic structure, policy priorities, and natural resource endowments. Now, on this chart, we are looking at the top 3 industries among non-financial SOEs by assets and by region in 2023. It does not show every sector where SOEs are present, but instead highlights the largest sectors in each regional SOE portfolio. Based on the new OECD dataset, SOE tend to be concentrated in sectors closely linked to the main rationale for state ownership mentioned earlier, such as essential services, strategic interest, and industrial economic development. Now, utilities account for the largest share of non-financial SOEs assets in most regions, so ranging from 25% to 68%, depending on the region. You see 68 in Europe. This reflects the fact that utilities often require large-scale investment, have natural monopoly characteristics, and are closely linked to public policy objectives, such as, universal and affordable access. Mining and manufacturing are also prominent in several regions, particularly where SOEs are linked to strategic resources, industrial capacity, export revenues, fiscal income, and national development. Mining SOEs, for example, appear among the top 3 sectors by assets in several resource-rich regions, including Latin America and Africa. Obviously, they are present also in many other regions, including China, but this is also relative to the size of the others. And just to starting to conclude these initial points, on these slides we look at SOEs performance across regions using 2 indicators: asset turnover ratio and sales growth, just basic as a proxy. Asset turnover ratio shows how efficiently SOEs use their assets to generate sales. Now, the picture is mixed. Efficiency has improved in regions such as Europe, Africa, and Latin America, but declined in China and across Asia. This suggests that even though SOEs in these regions may have large and growing asset bases, those assets are generating less sales per unit of assets than before. And sales growth shows a related but slightly different picture. So in China and rest of Asia, SOE sales growth has slowed considerably relative to 2013 levels. Now, this does not mean that SOEs are selling less than in the past. Rather, it means that sales are growing more slowly. And in Africa and Latin America, sales growth recovered after 2017, partly reflecting the importance of commodity-related SOEs where performance can be influenced by global price cycles. So overall, the slide shows that SOE performance varies significantly across regions. Efficiency and sales growth do not always move together, especially because SOEs often operate in capital-intensive sectors and may also pursue policy objectives alongside commercial ones. And finally, a few thoughts to take into the panel discussion on how SOEs can support resilience and competitiveness. SOEs can play an important role where markets alone may not deliver the scale, stability, or long-term investment needed. However, the contribution depends greatly on how well governments manage the trade-offs between strategic objectives, efficiency, and fair competition. Given also this nature, of the state of, regulator, and then the multiplicity of roles that may also hinder competition. Let's look at some risks and opportunities grouped across a few key sectors, the three ones. So first, in areas like energy, logistics, infrastructure, and defense, here we see risks such as supply chain disruptions and geopolitical fragmentation, but there are also clear opportunities where SOEs can strengthen infrastructure resilience, support strategic coordination, and secure access to critical resources. Second, in sectors like manufacturing, digital infrastructure, and telecommunications, there are often concerns around market neutrality and balancing commercial and strategic objectives. At the same time, SOEs can play a key role in mobilizing investment in the green and digital transition and supporting innovation. And third, in areas linked to economic and social resilience, such as transport, finance, and essential services, here there are risks related to fiscal exposure and compensation pressures. However, SOEs are also critical during crisis, and that should be the role of the state, helping to maintain essential services, support financial stability, ensure continuity of supply. Overall, how governments position and govern SOEs in these roles has important implications for both resilience and competitiveness. So finally, allow me to highlight that SOEs are major actors, often operating in sectors that are essential for public services, infrastructure, strategic resource, and long-term development, so they can contribute to competitiveness, resilience, and economic and social security. So they're there, alive and kicking. So countries that treat SOE governance as a strategic priority increasingly see it as a source of competitive advantage, improving capital allocation, attractive investment, and strengthening trust in markets. That's why good corporate governance is also critical. At the OECD, our work in this area is anchored in the OECD guidelines for corporate governance of state-owned enterprise, our updated version, which provide a benchmark for transparency, accountability, efficiency, and sound ownership practices. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from the panelists on how these issues play out in practice. And so let's move directly, Maya, if you allow me. Yeah, okay, to the round table, also to keep our timing. Now I'm delighted to introduce our distinguished panel and moderate today's discussion, national strategies for SOEs as partners for resilience, competitiveness, and growth. Our panelists have rich experiences and bring diverse perspectives, and I'm sure that this discussion will enrich the session, also complement the messages that were transmitted by Minister Puisto, my OECD Secretary General. Now, today we'll be hearing from a mix, this is also what we like to do at the OECD, mix of government and corporate, SOE corporate level speakers, and And let me introduce the panelists in alphabetical order. So I have Tai Ung Baik, Korea Ambassador to the OECD. Mr. Baik is a legal scholar and attorney with extensive experience in academia, legal practice, also international human rights. And he was also a member of the UN Human Rights Council Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearance, serving as vice chair from 2018 to 2020 and chair from 2020 to 2021. Matej Bule, State Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Republic of Croatia. Mr. Bule is responsible for overseeing and coordinating very complex activities related to the preparation and implementation of fiscal, financial, and economic policies, as well as the drafting of law, strategies, programs, and other regulation within the ministry's scope of work. And in this role, he also provides strategic advice and expert support to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of the Republic of Croatia, engaging also with the OECD a lot also for the accession phase. Claire Chatfield, Board Chair, Chantier de l'Atlantique France. Chantier de l'Atlantique is a world leader in highly complex ships and offshore installations with 3 distinct business units, ships, marine energy, and services. And they are recognized expert in the field of designing, testing, and turnkey delivery of cruise and navy ships, as well as electrical substations for offshore wind farms. France owns 84.34% of the capital through its Agence de Participation de l'État. Janne Kankanen, Director General, National Emergency Supply Agency of Finland, and the national, which operates within the government branch of Finland Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and the agency so supports authorities, organizations, and business and industry in maintaining and improving security of supply and plans and implements related preparedness measures. Luca Niculescu, my left, Secretary of State, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Romania, National Coordinator for Romania's OECD accession process. Luca Niculescu was appointed to this role in September 2022. He was Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary of Romania to France, Andorra, and Monaco between 2016 and 2022. And in this capacity, also represented Romania to other international organizations with headquarters in Paris. And last but not least, actually, Maja Strandberg, you heard already from her. She's Director General of Ownership Steering Department, Prime Minister Office, Finland is where is located. The Ownership Department Steering Department is responsible for preparing and implementing decisions related to Finland ownership policy. We heard from Minister, the 70 and more companies. But we are also pleased that Maja contribution to the OECD work on state-owned enterprises as chair of the OECD Working Party on state ownership and privatization practices. So in terms of the panel format, we'll ask 3 rounds of questions, which we will focus broadly on the main themes of the intended discussion. And they include how, first, governments can adapt policies to remain resilient, competitive, and growth-oriented under conditions of uncertainty and disruption. How SOEs can be strategic partners for security, resilience, and competitiveness, and how governments can create an enabling environment while ensuring, as we heard, market fairness and efficiency, so not at the detriment of competition, especially in some areas. We will then hear from our 2 lead discussants, the ambassadors of Turkey and Portugal. And then we have some time, hopefully, for questions from the audience, and we will devote the last few minutes to conclusion. So let me start with our 2 corporate representatives, who would each of you be able to spend some time in detailing how you are part, because again, company, but part of the government strategies to build resilience in SOEs in your respective roles. So, Claire.
Thank you very much, Carmine, and thank you to the OECD for organizing this very timely discussion. To answer how we contribute to public strategies for resilience, I feel we must first look at the framework that we operate within. At Chantier de l'Atlantique, our governance architecture is tightly aligned with both the OECD guidelines on corporate governance for SOEs and the clear mandate of our majority shareholder, the APE, I should say that the APE has formalized 3 clear interlocking strategies for its portfolio: performance, resilience, and corporate social responsibility and sustainability. As chair of the board, my primary mission, working hand in hand with our board members and the executive team, is to translate those high-level public policy objectives into concrete, everyday corporate reality. For us, resilience is not a passive concept. It is actively engineered. And we've structured this resilience around 3 deeply operational pillars. The first one is strategic diversification. We have intentionally built and we sustain a multi-pillar industrial strategy, which Carmine described. We don't depend on a single market. Our activity spans 3 distinct sectors: large commercial cruise ships, naval defense vessels, which range from complex fleet support ships to the future French nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. And last but not least, marine renewable energy infrastructure, and specifically massive offshore wind substations. The strategic value of this lies in the fact that these sectors operate in highly distinct industrial and economic cycles. The commercial cruise industry is highly sensitive to global economic consumer trends and travel patterns. Defense, on the other hand, is driven by long-term state budgetary cycles, but also geopolitical security realities. Meanwhile, marine renewables follow the fast accelerating European energy transition pathway. By balancing these 3 pillars, the board and the executive team can manage capacity and absorb massive macroeconomic shocks. When the COVID pandemic completely paralyzed the global cruise sector, our defense and marine renewable operations provided the vital industrial continuity and financial stability that kept the shipyard strong. My role as chair is to monitor this equilibrium, ensuring that we optimize our total industrial capacity without allowing an over-reliance on any single market segment. Our second pillar centers on protecting what I would call the core industrial foundation. Resilience cannot exist if your underlying capabilities are fragile. For the Chantier de l'Atlantique, this means 2 things: safeguarding our unique physical infrastructure, which is the Saint-Nazaire shipyard, but also fiercely maintaining our human capital. Our shipyard features some of the largest industrial tools in Europe, including our specialized dry docks, our heavy gantry cranes. These are not just corporate assets. They are critical components of European industrial sovereignty. But concrete and steel are nothing without the skills to operate them. We employ and develop rare sovereign engineering and artisanal skills that take decades to mature. From advanced naval architecture to highly specialized welding and systems integration, these competencies are exceptionally difficult to replace if lost. From a governance perspective, the board ensures that our CapEx and human resource strategies reflect this long-term need. We don't downsize or cut specialized training programs to hit short-term quarterly targets. The state's resilience strategy dictates that we maintain these capabilities intact, ensuring that France and Europe always retain the independent ability to build large-scale maritime assets. This brings me to my third and final pillar, which is, and you mentioned it, Carmine, robust governance and risk oversight. As chair, I'm deeply aware that structural resilience requires absolute institutional integrity. We have instituted a governance framework built on high standards of transparency, strict accountability, and rigorous internal controls, mirroring what I believe are the very best practices advocated by the OECD. We've structured our board committees to maintain a continuous, forward-looking understanding of evolving risks. We don't just look at lagging financial indicators. We actively stress test our business against leading risk factors, whether they be the ones that were mentioned, global supply chain disruptions, raw material volatility, energy prices to cybersecurity threats, and also the rapidly shifting regulatory landscape of the green transition. So I would say in conclusion that by driving strategic diversification, protecting our sovereign industrial assets, and maintaining an uncompromising governance framework, we can ensure that the Chantier de l'Atlantique remains resilient, agile, competitive, and fully equipped to deliver on its commercial mandates and its vital public responsibilities.
Merci, merci Claire.
It's okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the kind invitation to this indeed timely discussion. Our organization's role is somewhat different here. We are not an SOE ourselves, but instead an agency that works with SOEs as well as private companies in Finland to build and maintain Finland's overall supply security system. And by supply security, I mean broadly the continuity of essential services and production, rather than simply referring to availability of critical materials or products. But let me explain a little bit more what this means in practice. Finland's model is built on a fundamental insight. In the modern economy, the state does not own nor operate most of the critical infrastructure. Private companies and state-owned enterprises do. So resilience cannot be built by government alone. It has to be built with the private sector and the SOEs through a structured, permanent partnership and collaboration. NESA, as the abbreviation for our agency stands for, NESA coordinates that mentioned partnership across two mechanisms. First, through networked cooperation. Sector by sector, we work with companies to map vulnerabilities, share threat assessment, and stress test continuity plans. Second, through contractual commitments or arrangements. In fact, a significant share of Finland's strategic stockpiling and production capacity reservations are actually carried out by companies under agreements with our agency. Thirdly, preparedness is also maintained through targeted regulation where voluntary commitment alone is not sufficient. For SOE specifically, this means that they are responsible for their own continuity management, but also that they have direct access to government threat assessments, a seat at the planning table as far as resilience is concerned, and a government that understands their operational realities. The result is that SOEs are not passive recipients of government resilience policy. They are active contributors to that. And the Finnish so-called comprehensive security model recognizes the role of companies very explicitly. And it can actually be said that security in Finland is also business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, so we move, and again, I think it's always good to have this dialogue from to our government, representatives from Croatia, Finland, Korea, and Romania to complement the enterprise level insights just shared. So first, Matej, is, let's say, there a particular sector where SOEs are driving innovation, resilience, or competitiveness? What are the key opportunities and challenges the sector is facing?
So, thank you, Director Dinoa, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests and colleagues. First of all, thank you for the invitation, for having me today. The direct answer to your question in Croatia case is definitely energy. I'm talking from our point of view is the energy sector. But one of the challenges is definitely that we experienced a huge shift in the definition of what is strategic nowadays. So for the last couple of years, we had a lot of crises, as many other countries that are now at this table. But next to that, we also had next to COVID crisis, next to energy crisis, we also had two very strong earthquakes, even in our capital city of Zagreb. So in the last 6 years, actually, we are in a constant crisis management. And the one main point, what also Director Dinoa said, is that SOE sector proved to be critical during this crisis. And now we are in an exercise called corporate governance reform in those SOEs. And when we talk with the line ministries, with the colleagues from the government, other parts of the government, now we have this huge shift and everything tends to be strategic. This is maybe not so good in a way that when something is strategic, this is not just a declaration or a statement. When something is strategic for a society, then we tend to give these projects to prioritize these projects, and in these cases, the economic rationale and logic is not so strong point as in some commercial cases. So it's not good that everything is strategic, because then the large part of economy is removed from the economic logic and market-oriented thinking, which is the best way of the way how to function, how one economy should function. So this is the one thing. The second challenge is let's say for the energy sector, is a communication with the general public. I will give you an example that we had in Croatia. So 7 years ago, before the COVID crisis, before the energy crisis, we built the LNG terminal in Croatia, liquefied natural gas terminal. And at that time, the government was attacked because many of people and political opposition at the time thought that this is not necessary, because Croatia spends only 2.6 billion of cubic meters of natural gas a year. We have a domestic production around 600 million, so around 20% of domestic needs are covered by the domestic production, and we are building 2.9 billion cubic meters capacity LNG, and who will use it? It proved to be a very good decision a few years after that, and now we rebuilt the LNG to the capacity of 7 billion cubic meters, and it is a vital point for energy security, not only of Croatia, but also for the neighboring countries. But my point is that the communication is very hard at this point, because let's say general public mood shifts very easily depending on the geopolitical circumstances around the world. This is the reason why we actually want one of the reasons why we want to join the OECD family, because the OECD standards regarding the corporate governance, we believe that will help us to build the SOE sector, which will be in charge of these very important industries or part of the industries in Croatian society. But this SOE sector will have let's say, credibility in the general public, and we will be much more able to conduct strategic projects with this sector, which has a huge credibility in the general public, and the general public has a trust in the management of this sector. So this is regarding the maybe some challenges. The opportunity is that, as I saw it personally, that our SOEs in Croatia, they cover whole of the economy. They have as such data that no other company in our society has, and those data are so detailed and so rich that with AI and computing possibilities that we now have with the supercomputers and everything, that big data analytics will help us and provide us with the productivity gain for the next decade. I will give you an example. Our energy grid company, which operates the energy grid, has the so detailed data about every household consumption of the electricity that goes up to 1 hour. And we can see when the one household actually put the air conditioning on. So these data are so detailed. You can predict the temperatures. You can predict by predicting the temperatures. You can also predict the necessity for the electricity in the coming days and hours. So if we conduct our businesses in SOEs in order to use this data to have a match between what we have predictions and how do we invest in our businesses, I think that we will be without any kind of innovation, just with match with big data analytics. I think that we have a productivity gain that is enough for the next 10 years. So this is maybe regarding some opportunities when it comes to the SOE sector.
Thank you, Matej, also for the nice word on the OECD, which really it's a family and welcoming new members, and also the role of the OECD standards, which are exactly there then to be used and adapted, but also as a hook for countries then to also to improve, their and sometimes it's good to have it from outside, and I also have, our personal experience. So, Maja, to you now, the topic is if, and if yes, how the state as an owner has changed the guidance for SOEs in building more robust resilience. We mentioned this, and risk preparedness in this changing global and I would say geopolitical context.
Thank you very much for the question. I will give a very practical example, but first, in case of Finland, you need to understand the geography in kind of when addressing this question. So first of all, we have actually included all of these themes into our ownership strategies and ownership policy, which means that in every single discussion that we hold with the company's management or chairs of the boards, it will include these elements on top of the theme of growth, which is today one of the major themes in the discussion in Finland. We also require more formal review of the topics in annual shareholder meetings in order to kind of enforce the owners' expectations on the matter. As a kind of a very practical example, I would like to use Finavia, which is our airport operator in Finland, and this applies to actually also other logistics and transportation infrastructure questions. Our company-specific ownership strategies have strengthened very much after the February 22. If you think about Finavia, which is our national airport, and with some over 10 kind of side airports in Finland, there's a lot of growth and building requirements with those airports, and we have followed very carefully the privatization activities that have taken place in Europe. And we have been approached, we have reviewed, and we have considered different kind of possibilities to partner or gain competence from other providers. But this question no longer is actually just a financial and operational question. It is very much a question of national security and critical infrastructure considerations, which are heavily on the table. And which means that with that kind of infrastructure, companies holding critical infrastructure assets, it is no longer just a financial and operational question when state as an owner considers our actions. This actually applies also to other logistics and transportation companies we have in our portfolio, for example, to VR, which is our national railways company. So these are the examples, Carmen, that I would like to give on this topic.
Thank you, Maya. And let's go to Korea, Ambassador. So the thing is how is the contribution and the strategies put in place by public authorities to strengthen the resilience, which was a common feature of state-owned enterprise.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank for your invitation to this very important forum. And I'm very glad to have a chance to talk about state-owned enterprise in Korea. Actually, in Korea, state-owned enterprises operate across a range of sectors, including finance, energy, infrastructure, and health. And they play an important role in delivering public services and supporting industrial policy objectives. They employ 157 executives and nearly 99,000 people in 2025. Korea SOE sector combines commercially active public cooperation with entities that retain strong public services and policy mandates. So it is really a time when we see multiple disruptions, such as geopolitical fragmentation, supply chain vulnerability, energy transition pressures, technological change, and fiscal constraints. Can SOE take some role? In Korea, the question is not whether a state-owned enterprises should play any role concerning these challenges. Actually, the real question is how SOEs can contribute to resilience and competitiveness without weakening market discipline, private sector dynamism, or public trust. So my message is kind of simple. State-owned enterprises can be a strategic partner for national resilience, and that in doing so, they must not serve as an instrument of distortion. Their strength must come from clear public purpose, sound governance, and transparent performance and fair competition. So Korea has actually served as a bureau member of OECD Working Party on state ownership and privatization practice. And this report that is recently published covered some of the real aspects of Korea, and I'm very glad that Korea could contribute to this. This report covers a lot of interesting aspects, and Korea is very well represented and it's shown as an example of how public state-owned enterprises can contribute to this, strengthen the resilience and the responses to the challenges. I would like to highlight just a couple of things. First, we need to set clear expectation in using this SOEs to respond to the challenges. The OECD guidelines remind us that the state should act as an informed and active owner while avoiding undue political intervention and maintaining a level playing field. They also place emphasis on sustainability, economic security, and resilience. It illustrates what we expect from SOEs. They should support national resilience in critical infrastructure, energy security, health system, and transition finance. At the same time, their public policy mandates should be clearly defined, transparently funded, and regularly evaluated. This aspect is especially important as Korea pursues its climate objectives under Framework Act on carbon neutrality and green growth. Korea is aiming at carbon neutrality by 2050 and a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030 from 2011 level. And Korea has embedded sustainability-related expectations in public sector and SOE governance systems, including through monitoring and performance evaluation arrangements. Second, we need to connect the resilience and the sustainability to governance. In Korea, sustainability is increasingly being integrated into SOE oversight framework. Environmental performance is reflected in annual performance evaluations, including indicators such as energy intensity, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and green investment. Korea has also introduced public institutions ESG guidelines in 2026. These guidelines cover 37 key indicators and 80 indicators across environmental, social, and governance pillars, and are intended to support the public institutions in pursuing sustainable management. The Ministry of Foreign and Finance and Economy has also indicated that these guidelines will be linked more systematically to disclosure and management performance assessment. Third, we need SOEs to strengthen competitiveness while preserving market fairness. SOEs can play a catalytic role in a strategic sector. In Korea, public financial institutions such as Export-Import Bank of Korea and Korea Development Bank have supported green and climate-related finance. Energy SOEs are also involved in areas such as hydrogen supply chains, offshore wind, and renewable energy deployment. These are areas where long investment horizons, technological uncertainty, and the coordination challenges can make public participation valuable. So the principle must be very clear. SOEs should crowd in, not crowd out, public enterprises. Where SOEs partner with private firms, they should do so through transparent procurement, open competition, and clear risk sharing. I have many things to say, but we'll just conclude my remark. So in this uncertain time, SOEs can be a strategic asset, I think. And they should be an assets only if they can be assets, only if they are governed as enterprises, not as an administrative extension of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Very important issues and crowding, not crowding out, but crowding in. And thank you also for mentioning we have been working also on the SOEs in Asia and with Korea a lot, and this and all evidence-based. So all reports, all data, because I think this is what I think OECD should do. So giving policy advice, but based on evidence. Now I turn you to Luca Niculescu. In a sense, we are ending this second round, which was about this resilience and competitiveness. And the question to you, again, another very important country, accession country, we are working a lot, is if you can share an example, recent or planned reform related to the governance of state-owned enterprises that is intended to build resilience or competitiveness. Luca.
Thank you so much, dear Carmine. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here and the Romanian team. We are so delighted to be here to share Romania's experiences in advancing reforms in the area of state-owned enterprises. As you know, Romania has taken significant steps to modernize the corporate governance framework of the state-owned enterprises. So we have made substantial legislative reforms, improvements implemented as part of our OECD accession process. And I want to take this opportunity in front of this audience to say thank you to you, Carmine, to your team, to Antonio, Sara, Daniele, and all of your team who helped us day by day to approve and then implement these reforms. As you know, is not every day very simple because you have to deal with politicians. And of course, they will ask you a lot of questions, and especially when you are in front of a lot of MPs asking, why do we have to do these reforms? You can't simply say it's just because of the OECD process. You have to share with them data and statistics and tell also them that this is the right thing to do. So I will present some of the reforms we made in the OECD accession process. So they are already delivering tangible and measurable results. So one of the key achievements has been the clearer separation of the state ownership and regulatory functions within public authorities, because that helped to reduce conflicts of interest and promotes a more professional and transparent approach to state ownership. Another key element was the establishment of the Agency for Monitoring and Evaluating the Performance of Public Enterprises, AMEPIP. This is a specialized body operating under the government and coordinated through the General Secretariat of the government that plays a central role in monitoring compliance with corporate governance requirements and also evaluating the performance of SOEs. This establishment of the AMEPIP and also the adoption of a state ownership policy have strengthened the state's capacity to act as an informed and professional owner capable of setting clear strategic objectives. And this reform package also introduced several measures for strengthening governance practices and improving enterprise performances. A few examples: reducing the duration of provisional board mandates and ensuring fair, transparent and merit-based nomination procedures for the board members, revising the sanctions framework to better discourage non-compliance with corporate governance requirements, guaranteeing equal access to information for all the shareholders, and improving performance target setting and monitoring mechanism. So, through these reforms, our country is not only improving the governance of state-owned enterprises, but also enabling them to become more effective partners in contributing to the country's long-term competitiveness and in an increasingly uncertain global environment. And I will give you at the end just some few examples on how Romania also contributes to regional reform efforts by sharing our own experience with partner countries. Building on the progress achieved through our own governance reforms, now we have provided expertise and technical support to both the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. As an example, Romania has contributed as a peer reviewer within the informal task for supporting the assessment of Moldova's framework against the OECD guidelines on corporate governance on state-owned enterprises, and we view such cooperation as an important means of promoting good governance standards, fostering institutional capacity, and advancing convergence with OECD best practices across the region. So thank you again, and we are here to, and hopefully we'll be member of the team, of the family, as you said, quite soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. But thank to you and your fantastic team. This is also applies, Matei, to you. We're working very well with Bulgaria, with all accession countries, and I think is a continuous interaction where there is no. I mean, everyone is always learning from the other. So and trying again to advance and using the standards. So it's thanks also for not directly saying in the parliament it's the OECD, otherwise we have to engage a couple of bodyguards for each of us. But okay, so let's we are more or less on time. So let me turn again now to the corporate representatives. In a sense, we go to the last round of questions, then we will give the floor to our also ambassadors who will introduce also the question. Now, Janne, now, how is Finnish preparedness built up with private and state-owned companies, including current risks and opportunities? And we have also said, and what are the major achievements that so NESA to redirect or establish plans that take account of the changed global situation where SOEs are the key contributors?
So thank you very much. Well, let me start by highlighting that Finland's preparedness really rests on an idea that all actions do matter for our common security and resilience. In practical terms, our sectoral model covers over seven critical sectors, and within them 30 critical industries. In each of these companies, both SOEs and private, participate in joint planning, share operational data with our agency, and commit to specific continuity obligations. In return, they get early warning on emerging risks and a government partner that speaks, hopefully, their language. The current risk landscape has indeed shifted significantly. The threats we are most focused on today are not only conventional security or military. Of course, the geography matters, as Maya was saying, but that's not the whole story. The threats are also economic. Weaponized dependencies, concentrated supply chains, the deliberate use of market power to create strategic leverage. Finland, like most European countries, built decades of efficiency into our supply chains. Now we are selectively rebuilding redundancy into the most critical ones, drawing on the preparedness model that has existed since the 1960s. The opportunity, and this is something I feel fairly strongly about, is that resilience and competitiveness are not in conflict. Companies that can guarantee continuity under pressure are more valuable to their customers. Countries with critical production capacity are more attractive investment destinations. SOEs that invest in resilience are building long-term strategic value and not just absorbing cost. It seems clear that resilience is now moving from a compliance question to a more strategic one. It used to be that companies thought about continuity planning as a regulatory obligation, something the risk department handled. Increasingly, the most forward-looking SOEs, as well as private companies, are treating supply chain resilience as a source of competitive advantage. This has real implications for how SOEs think about their risk profiles. The traditional financial risk framework, credit risk, market risk, operational risk, is no longer necessarily sufficient. Geopolitical risk, dependency risk, concentration risk in critical inputs, these need to be present in any serious risk assessment today. As for NESA's major achievements, to cite your own achievements tends to be a tall order for us Finns. Let me try nevertheless. Three things stand out here. First, the integration of economic security into our threat picture. 5 or 6 years ago, our risk assessments focused primarily on physical disruptions, natural disasters, kinetic conflict, infrastructure failure. Today, economic coercion, weaponized trade dependencies, and supply chain concentration feature as prominently as traditional security threats. That shift is how we frame the problem has changed what we ask SOEs and private companies to prepare for. Second, the expansion of strategic stockpiling, more broadly call it material preparedness, beyond government warehouses or government-owned facilities. A growing share of Finland's reserves and material preparedness arrangements are now held and managed by companies, including SOEs, under agreements with our agency. Furthermore, the various instruments have been intensively developed further. For instance, increased usage of so-called production reservations, as well as focusing on strengthening digital infrastructure and the related technical backup systems. This is more efficient, keeps materials closer to where they will be used, and builds genuine operational capability rather than just static storage. Several of our key SOEs in energy, healthcare, and logistics now carry significant continuity arrangements that go well beyond what regulation alone would require. Third and last, the new legislative framework itself that actually entered into force in April this year. Getting Parliament to pass a modernized national security supply law with broad cross-party support reflects a genuine societal consensus that resilience is a shared responsibility and part of comprehensive security. SOEs and the business sector more broadly played an active role in shaping that framework, which really is exactly how it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janne. Claire, state ownership can support longer-term industrial investment cycles, which, by the way, is natural in your sector, also characterized by big economies of scale and scope. So how has this shaped Chantier de l'Atlantique approach force development and green transition projects while balancing other shareholder interests? Claire.
Thank you, Carmine. I'd like first to turn to the underlying economic realities of our industry in order to explain how state ownership directly shapes our approach to long-term innovation and the green transition. As you know, the maritime and offshore energy sectors are fundamentally capital intensive, characterized by exceptionally long industrial life cycles. When the Chantier de l'Atlantique designs a new generation of commercial vessels or engineers complex infrastructure for the offshore wind industry, we are not looking at the next fiscal quarter or even the fiscal year. We are looking at massive upfront research and development alongside heavy infrastructure investments that carry a 10 to 15-year return on investment horizon. In the traditional financial markets, that kind of timeline can create immense friction. Short-term investor pressure often demands rapid returns. This is where the specific nature of state ownership becomes a decisive strategic asset. The state provides what we call patient capital. This is not a buzzword, it's an investment philosophy. Patient capital stabilizes our equity, provides long-term predictability, and allows us to maintain a steady, unwavering strategic course. It effectively insulates the shipyard from the paralyzing effects of short-term market volatility and cyclical downturns, and it gives us the breathing room to innovate boldly. A prime real-time example of this patient capital in action is our proactive commitment to the green transition. Today, the pressure to decarbonize the global shipping industry is immense. It's driven by stringent public policies and international regulations such as IMO targets and European climate mandates. But crucially, it's also driven by the market itself. Our commercial clients, particularly global cruise lines, are facing intense consumer and regulatory pressure. They are actively demanding lower emission and ultimately zero emission vessels. Backed by our stable ownership structure and long-term horizon, our board has been able to confidently approve highly ambitious multi-year investment programs. We aren't just tweaking existing designs, we are reinventing maritime propulsion. First, we are investing heavily in fuel transition infrastructure, adapting our ship designs to handle also LNG, methanol, and potentially future alternative synthetic fuels. Second, we are pioneering a return to wind. We have developed our proprietary solid sail technology, a revolutionary 100% composite foldable sail system designed specifically for large-scale commercial vessels. You may have seen just recently, this vision culminated in a historic milestone, the launching of the Orient Express Corinthian, the largest sailing ship in the world, built right in our Saint-Nazaire yard. This achievement is, in my view, tangible proof that long-term R&D, backed by patient capital, creates world-leading, commercially viable innovation. This brings me to the last bit of the question that often arises, and I think is one that is central to the OECD's mission, is how do we balance the strategic objectives of the state with the interests of other shareholders? My answer to the panel today is definitive. There is really no contradiction here. In fact, there is complete strategic alignment. This is actively, I would say, demonstrated and endorsed by the presence of our non-state shareholders on the board who play a very active role and who participate in all the decisions. And there is no contradiction also, because in my view, whether you are a state shareholder or a private investor, the ultimate objective is exactly the same. It's sustained long-term value creation and corporate resilience. In the 21st century maritime industry, ignoring the green transition or underinvesting in your workforce is a recipe for corporate obsolescence. Investing heavily in today's green technologies, modernizing our industrial tools, and upskilling our workforce is not a political compromise. It's a strict commercial necessity. It is the only way that the chantier remains globally competitive, thereby securing both the financial value and the strategic sovereign worth of the company for all shareholders tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand. So we may have the option for next MCM on your the largest ship, and so let's move immediately to our two lead discussants from Turkey and Portugal. We shared their reflection on the discussion so far, and ask also a question to the panelists, and then we will conclude and give the floor to Maya. Let me first hand the floor to Ambassador Ezen Altuk from Turkey with a question for any of our government representatives.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all panelists for these detailed, very innovative presentations. Yes, today's panel highlighted now state-owned enterprises' objectives. And state ownership also remains relatively widespread in Turkey and is an area for further reform. In Turkey, these state-owned enterprises serve a range of policy objectives that differ across sectors and enterprises. A key objective is the provision of essential public services and infrastructure. And also, in some cases, the SOEs contribute to market stability during economic shocks, during period of crisis, uncertainty, and help achieve broader social and policy objectives. Of course, these objectives, I think, are reflected in sectoral legislation and government planning documents. I want to give an example from Turkey. For instance, Turkey, after the major earthquakes in 2023, SOEs in sectors such as energy and transportation ensured the continuity of essential services and helped stabilize supply chains in the affected earthquake region. This is really very important, and this experience highlighted both the strategic importance of the SOEs, especially during times of crisis. As we look ahead, we believe that a coherent and comprehensive policy framework is essential, and further reform would be beneficial. Of course, we strongly value the OECD's evidence-based work in supporting reform efforts, particularly through monitoring the implementation of the OECD guidelines on corporate governance of SOEs. Strengthening data collection and analysis on the economic role and performance of the SOEs will help guide policy decisions and allow countries to benchmark progress. Of course, in this context, we welcome the work of the Working Party on this issue, and we particularly welcome further analysis of the relationship between the SOEs and competitiveness. This work will help deepen our understanding and support countries in addressing evolving economic challenges. And today, I also want to wish our success to all the candidate countries, and we want to see them as soon as possible among us. And I think the answer may be given, but the question in front of us is, how can governments adapt policies for the SOEs to remain, as the panelists already mentioned, resilient, competitive, and growth-oriented, especially in situations of uncertainty and disruption? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Maybe I give the floor to Ambassador Rui Moreira.
Yes, well, thank you, Carmine. Thank you, Antonio, for giving me the opportunity to participate. It's been great. We value the roundtable discussion, which are always a gain in terms of insights. And we are appreciative of the role that the OECD, and particularly the SOE unit and Working Party on State Ownership and Privatization Practices, plays in disseminating knowledge and guidance, both through peer learning opportunities such as this, and also in terms of technical outputs. With this in mind, we are looking forward, very interested in the release of the 2026 Ownership and Governance Compendium, which will help us to benchmark Portuguese SOE practices with our global peers. In Portugal, we have SOEs at central, regional, and local level, with enterprises adopting several different legal forms, including joint stock companies, limit liability companies, and statutory companies. Given the diversity of our portfolio, the types of resilience and competitiveness related to SOEs can vary, and it varies in size, scale, and sector. Accordingly, transparent disclosure of objectives and performance is critical to our enterprise monitoring, and is also important to the various stakeholders included. In my experience, having been mayor of a city for 12 years, in a municipality that consolidates 70 wholly owned SOEs dedicated to services and utilities, and 3 others co-owned with central state, namely in terms of waste management and public transport, the key relies on monitoring performance and efficiency, particularly when SOEs do not face competition. In Portugal, it's a fact, SOEs are required to disclose public service obligations and also public policy objectives in their annual reports, aiming to clearly delineate between commercial and non-commercial activities. In any case, in times of crisis or uncertainty, with new requirements in terms also of strategic sovereignty of our states, we anticipate there may be new or novel public services obligations placed on SOEs, and a more stringent cost-benefit and analysis at the end of the day. Because of what our Croatian friend mentioned, the public must understand the scope. With this in mind, I would like to address a question to the panelists. How can governments mobilize SOEs to best respond in times of uncertainty? And how should transparency and disclosure obligations be applied? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Rui. So we are a bit run out of time, but maybe I will leave the floor if anyone wants to intervene, maybe starting from my left, if you want to respond to Ezen or final comments, and then I give back the floor to Mai. I don't know, Luca, if you want to intervene or?
I think we are too new.
Mike.
I think we are new kid on the block, so I would let the answer to someone who knows a bit more on this topic.
Okay.
Just to the colleague from Turkey, and that we really appreciate the same experience that you had during the earthquake scene in Turkey. Actually, SOEs also in Croatia during the earthquakes proved to be first responders when it comes to the area that was affected by the earthquake. So, thank you.
Yeah, actually, Korea had tried to connect the problem, the reform, and the way how we addressed the issue when OECD Working Party is working on guidelines on corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. And I think sharing experience, on the one hand, learning from OECD to reform domestic system, and also sharing our domestic experience with OECD to develop OECD guidelines. Those were the key, I think, and they were very successful in Korea case in handling all these.
Thank you, Claire. Last word, if you want, or Jana.
I just wanted to comment further on that. And I think that boards play a very important role in ensuring the independence and making sure that the governance works in the right sort of way. And I certainly feel that responsibility.
Maybe just to add that it's really about making sure that there's clarity on the mandates and transparency in all what we do. For instance, our activity is duty bound not to interfere with the market, so we keep it market neutral, although we have a great degree of cooperation directly with the companies. So no easy answer, but obviously depending on the specific case. Thank you.
Thank you, Janne. So immediately the floor to you, Maija.
Thank you, everyone, once again for your engagement today in our roundtable discussions. Today's discussion took place in a backdrop of a rapidly evolving global environment. The governments are confronting new challenges linked to geopolitical shifts, economic security, technological transformation, and the transition to more sustainable economies. These developments create both risks and opportunities for strengthening competitiveness and resilience while preserving the benefits for open and well-functioning markets. Let me briefly highlight a few key messages that emerged today. First, SOEs are increasingly called upon to address challenges that require long-term planning and sustained investment. We heard examples ranging from ensuring security of supply and maintaining critical services to supporting industrial capabilities and development and economic transitions. These illustrate the continued importance of SOEs as partners in advancing broader economic and strategic objectives. At the same time, expectations have expanded from delivering commercial outcomes to contributing to resilience, long-term competitiveness, and economic security. Secondly, the resilience and competitiveness are closely interconnected. Reliable infrastructure, secure supply chains, industrial capabilities, technological capabilities, and innovation are not only sources of resilience, they are key determinants of competitiveness. The ability to anticipate disruption and adapt to change is central to long-term economic performance. Third, governments are becoming more active and strategic owners. This is not necessarily about expanding state ownership, but reassessing ownership rationales, clarifying expectations, and ensuring that strategic assets effectively support broader policy objectives. As noted, commercial performance is most often aligned with resilience, sustainability, and long-term development. Finally, governance remains a central enabler. As expectations on SOEs evolve, strong governance becomes more important. It provides the clarity, accountability, and transparency needed to pursue strategic objectives while maintaining efficient and well-functioning markets. These messages resonate strongly with OECD guidelines on corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. These guidelines recognize the important role of SOEs can play in delivering public policy objectives while emphasizing the need for high standard of governance, integrity, and commitment to maintaining a level playing field. Transparency, clear rationales for ownership, professional and accountable boards, and owners reinforces trust and accountability. Our discussion also reinforced today the importance of risk identification and management. Recent years have shown how quickly operating environments can change and how interconnected risks have become. This underscores the need for preparedness, adaptability, and long-term thinking, both at the enterprise level and ownership levels. Looking ahead, these discussions point to questions that will remain high on governments' agendas. Across OECD and partner economies, there is a reassessment of the role of the state as an owner in response to changing global and market realities. Issues such as resilience, economic security, competitiveness, and sustainability are increasingly shaping ownership policies and expectations of SOEs. For the OECD Working Party on State Ownership and Privatisation Practices, which I have the honor of chairing, this reinforces the importance of supporting the implementation of OECD standards by strengthening the evidence base through our analytical work, including the Ownership and Governance of State-Owned Enterprises report and the OECD SOE dataset. It also highlights the value of continued peer learning. While national approaches differ, many of the challenges discussed today are shared. The exchange of experiences remains one of the Working Party's greatest strengths. Finally, today's discussions points to several areas where further reflection and international dialogue will be important, including the governance of SOEs operating in strategic sectors, SOEs' role in supporting innovation and competitiveness, performance monitoring and target setting, board effectiveness, and balancing commercial and non-commercial objectives. These are all complex questions, but also an opportunity. By learning from one another and building on OECD standards, governments can continue to strengthen SOE governance in ways that support both resilience and competitiveness. I leave today encouraged by the quality of discussion and openness to shared learning. We hope that this exchange will contribute to broader discussions during the Ministerial Council meeting and beyond. On behalf of Finland and the OECD, I would like to thank you once again for participating, and thanks also to those who have tuned in on time, and special thanks to Secretariat for your continuous support for our Working Party. For those who are here in person, I would now like to invite you to continue the discussions over the coffee. Thank you very much.